Hello everyone, and welcome to this excuse me, this audio podcast. This audio podcast as part of a research and report, and this audio podcast as part of a Labostix report, and this audio podcast as part of a ZtormLabostix production. In today's audio podcast, looking at a Storm Collaborative sort of audio podcast, and looking at investigating social media, mainstream media, faith, and solid organ transplant education. So, as part of this audio podcast, sort of overview, and a little bit in some sort of background in regards to the contents and what this audio podcast will look at. So, introduction, aims and objectives. A look at a brief on CKD. Looking at social media, mainstream media, and healthcare education. Looking at faith, ethics, and science, and then continuing looking at ethics from a healthcare science stance, discussion, discussion, and then some conclusions, and then a list of citations or references at the latter end of this overview. To begin with some background or intro. So, with exception to individuals, excuse me, with exception to individuals with severe learning difficulties and neurological illnesses, which of course are devastating. There has never existed a human being who has not been aware not only of his or her body, his or her body, but also of his or her individuality, both physical and spiritual. Human beings are consciously aware of own lives, and it is through understanding that awareness of a consciously constructed self is identified. The use of social media today sort of provides unparalleled opportunities to provide and receive education, access to communication, and interactivity. Social media or mainstream media such as television, newspapers, magazines, and radio stations are also being used to prompt education surrounding specific long-standing or long-term conditions. Certainly, the use of social media is not limited by constraints of time and geography. Now, looking at the aims, excuse me, the aims and objectives of this works. So, first question around the aims and objectives is, can Muslims donate organs? Secondly, is there an Islamic faith stance or basis on using social media or mainstream media to prompt organ transplantation education? And thirdly, does the healthcare scientists, or do healthcare scientists have a role providing the public education surrounding solid organ transplantation? So, as part of this overview, I look at CKD. So CKD is a long-term, irreversible condition that has been described in literature as the gradual and usually permanent loss of kidney or renal function over time. Early in the disease process or processes, individuals with CKD often experience no symptoms, and for a while, CKD has been an underdiagnosed condition. Even with the absence of symptoms, the rate of CKD is increasing sort of globally, and leading to greater need for renal transplantation. Transplantation is not a cure. However, evidence indicates it is better compared to forms other forms, or the preliminary forms of KRT, or kidney replacement therapy, being hemodialysis, in the treatment of this long-standing condition, and enhances prognosis and mortality. Presently, living renal transplantation accounts for 1/3 of transplants, or renal transplants, in the United Kingdom, for example. And this high need but low supply amongst minority ethnic populations, minority ethnic populations, in addition to other populations, presents problems or issues in achieving an optimal match of blood group and tissue type, where these are less common amongst the majority population, resulting in patients from minority ethnic populations, for example, spending more time, or an increased time, on transplant waiting lists by comparison. So using social media perhaps has several gains compared to traditional forms of mainstream media where healthcare education is concerned, but both have advantages with regard to reach, accessibility, and prompting organ transplantation education. In relating, health literacy is also important, thus bridging gaps in understanding of specific areas of health. So looking at social media, or mainstream media, and healthcare education, so social media has grown exponentially, now representing 1 in 5 minutes spent online, and patients and carers and the lay public accessing information, combining health issues and relating to organ transplantation through mainstream media. And using social media perhaps has several gains with standard forms, or in comparison with standard forms of mainstream media where healthcare is concerned. But both again have advantages with regards to reach, accessibility, and prompting awareness and education. Using social media versus mainstream media to prompt organ transplantation education offers broader opportunity in ways as previously unrealized. One study, for example, carried out on college students in an investigation in the United States, demonstrated that social media-based communication had the greatest impact for donor registration, and described that social media campaign resulted in 9,000 documented donor registrations. Thus, use of social media alongside existing mass media campaigns can be seen to be highly effective in prompting a transplant awareness. So now looking at faith, ethics, and science, and looking at this from from a broad perspective, but also from a specific and particular particular sort of faith perspective, if you like, in at least some regard. So Islamic science has always been holistic. The terminology holistic is of recent origin and can be ambiguous. Sometimes it refers to the recognition of interdependence between mind and body. If theory relates to holism with reference to the Islamic perspective, then really it can only refer to the governing principle of Islam, of Islam, and that Tawheed, which is in regard to the oneness of God or oneness of Allah, and the unity of that He alone has created. It is through trials and tribulations mankind matures, and Allah, God willing, begin to face the reality of circumstances. Trials and tribulations trials and tribulations free mankind from the illusions in which man seeks refuge. Any attempt to investigate or study phenomena. So again, for example, in around organ transplantation, without reference to scripture, that being the Quran in this context, is destined to fail or failure, because it has a fragmented link with reality. It is also quintessential to note that religious morality sets limits which do not change with passing public opinion. If mankind denies the world around him or them as a self-evident truth, then mankind is also denying that Allah, God alone, is a self-evident truth. Science has limitations. It is time bound. It is time bound and not timeless. And thus, for the Muslim, the Quran also is referred to as the criterion or al-Furqan, and teaching to discriminate not only between good and evil, but also between shades of grey and the misnomers which are apparent in daily life. And the Quran is multi-layered and multifaceted. It is distinct, and it has always been for Muslims throughout history a premise for decision making. Now looking at ethics from a healthcare science perspective or stance, so an understanding of patient or individual attitudes towards management and technology, for example, in around social media, could inform unbiased patient-centric interventions. And moreover, literature informs that the use of social media in particular, and perhaps more generally, provides a gateway for knowledge gathering and decision making. Social media also influences tech use for health self management and shaping the development for assessing the appropriateness of social media mediated interventions for patients or individuals where sharing experiences are involved. Overall, a greater education on social media a greater education in around the use of social media and on health organ transplantation can help both clinicians both can help both clinicians other and other additional allied health professionals and healthcare scientists to leverage patient values and strategies to enhance both important decisions this both important both important decisions and decision making and prompting education, since social media is now almost everyday language. Social media have place and it's important that such topics are discussed to encompass the Muslim faith. In Islam, organ transplantation is in Islam, organ transplantation is allowed. Allah, God informs that for every disease there is a cure, and more educational campaigns through media involving healthcare, scientists, and Muslim communities are required. Those at the same time, from an ethics and a healthcare science basis, those who do not believe in mercy or practice it cannot be expected to be saved by it. So in discussion, the Quran and teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, inform that suffering in life is short-term. For example, worldly life is at best a very brief, is very brief, and Islam never condemns what is natural to the human creature. Attachment becomes a grave sin when it leads to forgetfulness of what is, again, in the words of the Quran, better and long-standing. Patients and carers and the and the public use the internet and social media to access information relating to solid organ transplantation, and this is where healthcare scientists also have an important role to provide health science transparency, where other healthcare professionals are challenged. Clarity of terminology to help increase health literacy on topics relating to organ transplantation is now more important. Using social media versus mainstream media to provide broader education surrounding transplantation is still unique. However, healthcare scientists could seek an opportunity to provide education surrounding topics in faith populations. So conclusions. Now some conclusions and sort of and hopefully in answer to those particular questions in as part of the aims and objectives of this overview. So number one, can Muslims donate organs? So whilst there are some perceptions on transplantations where Muslims can't donate, these do not represent the broader Islamic world. A campaign prompting the need for increased blood and blood transfusions and organ transplants from Black and Asian minority ethnicities and the Muslim faith was published in around 2015. There is no one faith that can claim privileged status regarding the complete and challenging questions of organ transplantation. However, yes, Muslims can donate organs. Secondly, is there an Islamic stance on using social media or mainstream media to prompt organ transplantation education? So the Islamic stance on the use of either social media or mainstream media would be positive to prompt organ transplantation if this helps to increase life expectancy. If policymakers want to see an increase in organ transplantation from from Muslim populations, for example, a more inclusive, a more inclusive process, a more inclusive, a more inclusive, a more inclusive process, a more inclusive process is required where the NHS and where NHS Trust, National Health Service Trust, for example, need to involve Muslims to help inform practice, to inform practice. Specifically, there needs to be further cohesion between those producing policy and Muslim involvement. The third question, as in this, and as part of this overview, was does the healthcare science does the healthcare scientists or do healthcare scientists have a role providing the public education surrounding organ transplantation? And the answer is yes. However, more research is required to shed light on what is the most effective approach for healthcare scientists to become proactive surrounding education for Muslim patients and to inform practice. For Muslim patients and sort of the and those from non-faith populations to inform practice and practices. So that draws this audio podcast to a close. This is a slide overview that looks at the list of references or citations that can be that listeners and viewers can check out to identify works in surrounding surrounding this overview as part of ZtormLabostix Productions, but also in regards to literature of relating regarding works. Again, this draws this audio podcast to a close. This has been an audio podcast as part of a research and report, an audio podcast as part of a Labostix report, and this audio podcast as part of a ZtormLabostix production.